911, what's the location of your emergency? We need an ambulance out at Bonanza Creek Ranch right now. We've got 2 people shot on a movie set. 2 people accidentally shot by a prop gun.
For that specific shot, it was literally supposed to be the gun being pulled out sideways.
He was in communication with Miss Hutchins,
and then he drew it again, and it went off.
So was it loaded with a real bullet or what? I cannot tell you that.
She was starting to go flush, I think holding her right side.
Deep breath, Halyna.
She said, "I can't feel my legs."
Alec Baldwin was the actor on set that pulled the trigger.
Just because it's an accident doesn't mean that it's not criminal.
She was my friend. She was my friend.
I'm the armor. Or at least I was.
The idea she could stop Mr. Baldwin is ludicrous.
Hurry, hurry, hurry was the motto on the set.
One more.
Alec is not exactly known worldwide for his even temperament.
We should have 2 guns and both were reloading.
I never took a gun and pointed at somebody and clicked the thing.
We're not asking you to be an armor, not asking you to be an expert in firearms. Just asking you to be safe and use common sense.
You didn't take it?
No. And this is really about justice for Halyna Hutchins.
Set, ready, and action.
In October of 2021, the movie Rust was in full production.
One more.
Rust is a Western. The lead actor, Alec Baldwin, playing the role of Harlan Rust.
Harlan Rust?
Rust is the story about a young kid in Kansas who accidentally shoots and kills a farmer, and he is sentenced to hang.
Got a little fight too. Come on, little piggy.
The story goes on that his grandfather finds his grandson, helps him escape from prison, and they're on the run.
No!
And the grandfather is Harlan Rust, the character that Alec Baldwin plays.
The movie was being filmed on location at the Bonanza Creek Ranch in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
New Mexico is a haven for filmmaking. It's been one of the most desirable places for landscapes and the tax incentives, of course, but it's so beautifully picturesque. And the Hollywood community has been coming out here since the 50s.
Bonanza Creek Ranch, it's a very good location for filming. It's up near Santa Fe, but it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And you can have a 360-degree panoramic view.
Hundreds and hundreds of films have been shot at the Bonanza Creek location, going back as far as 1955 with Jimmy Stewart.
You got no cause to shoot me.
Shooting's too good for you.
What did I do to you? Tell me, what did I do? I got a right to know.
Put your hand, the only thing you throw your hand over his mouth.
Joel Souza was the writer and director of the movie Rust, and he knew Alec Baldwin from the 2 of them working together previously on a movie called Crown Vic. Baldwin was a producer on that movie.
We talked about doing another project together with him as an actor, and I had a couple of things in mind, one of which I wanted to make a Western, and he thought that sounded interesting. And so he hired me to write the script.
It would be up to Joel Souza to find a director of cinematography for the movie. One of the candidates was a 42-year-old woman by the name of Halyna Hutchins.
I'm Scott Baker. I'm a filmmaker, and I was Halyna Hutchins' Steadicam operator and friend. In the back of my mind, I thought, this woman's going to win an Oscar someday for Best Cinematographer. I have DPs that I work with, and I think this guy's good, and she's good, and things like that. But then there's a few that you see that, like, this person has talent. This person has what it takes to succeed, and I saw that in Halyna.
She was a woman who was just in love with movies and movie making. She grew up on a Soviet military base where there wasn't much to do but watch movies. So she fell in love with movies at a young age, came over here, was really making a name for herself as a cinematographer. She came from a documentary background. She actually studied journalism and then fell into filmmaking when she was working on documentaries in the UK. That led her to come over here to the US to work in the film industry, where she kind of brought that eye that she had from documentaries and nonfiction filmmaking, and it was a really unique look that was announcing her as somebody to watch.
Halyna Hutchins was actually featured in American Cinematographer magazine, which is a very big deal, and in the issue was in 2019. She was named one of the 10 up-and-coming cinematographers to watch.
To get something like that, to get any kind of accolades for your work or, praise and in that sense of like, this person's going to be big is huge. And I know she was excited about that and what that meant for her going forward.
Between her work and her, her background, I think she was kind of a no-brainer to me. I asked the producers to, told them that's who I wanted. Please don't botch the deal, and because she's great.
We met for coffee, and it was about a week and a half or so before she went out to New Mexico for the pre-production work on Rust. Rust was all-consuming for her. This was everything that she was thinking about, and what her entire brain power was, already digging into the shots that she wanted to get and how she wanted the film to look and how excited she was for the project.
Once the movie is greenlit, Rust Movie Productions is brought on as the umbrella company. At some point, the armor is hired.
We should have 2 guns and both were reloading.
I'm Scott Rasmussen. I was interviewed to be the armor for the show Rust. I'd read portions of the script, and I knew that other people had turned it down based upon how much gunfire there was in it, how many props were in it, because they were asking me to be the prop master and the armor. So I told them in the conference call I would not be the prop master on the show, that I'd be more than happy to do the armor. I was available to be the armor, and I had the time for it, and I knew that if I was the armor, that we could do the show very safely, and that's what I told them.
The position of armor actually ended up going to a newcomer, a 24-year-old woman by the name of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed.
Hannah's father is Thel Reed. He is a Hollywood legend. He's not only an armorer, he's also a stuntman and an exhibition shooter, which is really what made him famous.
I knew about Thel Reed since I was a kid. You see him like on Ed Sullivan, and he would do quick draw. So he was an amazement at the time, because here this 15-year-old boy was handling guns.
I can start out with a fast draw.
And another person brought onto the production was a first assistant director by the name of David Halls.
First assistant director David Halls is hired. He's got a lot of experience, decades. He's been on dozens and dozens of sets involving firearms.
The first AD is like the wedding planner for a movie. And one of the most important jobs that the first AD has is the safety of the cast and the crew and everybody that's there on set. Specifically in this type of situation where you have firearms on set, it's the first AD's responsibility to make sure that all the checks are done.
By early October of 2021, production of the film was underway, but there were early signs of trouble on the set. Several members of the crew were already upset with the safety conditions and upset with Hannah Gutierrez-Reed in particular. There had been 2 accidental discharges, one of them involving Alec Baldwin's stunt double.
Hannah was prepping the stunt double in the cabin, unannounced to any of us outside the cabin. That firearm was discharged.
Coming up.
Deep breath, Halyna.
She said, I can't feel my legs.
It felt like somebody had taken a baseball bat to my shoulder.
The world reacts to Alec Baldwin shooting Joel Souza and killing Halyna Hutchins.
I got one of the little alerts on my phone. I was like, oh, crap, that's the film that Halyna's on.
A-list actor Alec Baldwin is cast in the real-life role he never wanted.
I try and cover the gun goes off.
Criminal defendant.
His lack of gun safety is something that he's going to have to answer for.
We heard that this was a toxic set.
One more. It's not his fault. He did nothing wrong.
Is there an actor's exemption from liability when they're handling a deadly firearm?
The Alec Baldwin manslaughter trial. Live coverage coming this July, only on Court TV.
On October 21st, 2021, the movie Rust had been in production for a few weeks at the Bonanza Creek Ranch just outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was a Western starring Alec Baldwin, who was also a producer on the project. The director, Joel Souza, and the director of cinematography, 42-year-old Halyna Hutchins. Several members of the crew had just left the production over what they called poor working conditions and safety concerns.
It's very rare that you're on set, especially like on a location type shoot, that you're gonna have crew members leave a production. You might have one or two people leave for personal issues or things like that, but to have several crew members leave a production because they feel unsafe, that is pretty rare.
According to some of the crew members, there was significant pressure mounting on everybody to get this film completed on time. On a movie set, the person responsible for really keeping the filming going is the film's first assistant director. And in this case, it was David Halls. And this is a guy with decades of experience.
I guess we'd say we were moving at ludicrous speeds, that we've just trying to race the production clock because we understood that we had a finite amount of time to complete a very ambitious schedule.
This is the scene that was shot that day, just before the lunch break.
So camera left for you.
I'll stand right here for you.
So whip it out. Yeah. Okay, well, let me get this all greased. Ready? Okay, ready? Okay, ready? Ready. And set.
After the lunch break, they were back in the church rehearsing a close-up of the same shot of Alec Baldwin pulling his gun.
We were preparing for the shot of Mr. Baldwin sitting in the pew. It was basically from his waist to the top of his head, and his action was just to pull out the revolver. And in the story, he's pointing the revolver at two U.S. Marshals that have come into the church.
Alden Russ?
For that specific shot, it was literally just supposed to be the gun being pulled out sideways.
He was pulling it out. I'm sure he was getting used to that action. He was in communication with Miss Hutchins about where to point the gun.
And then he drew it again, and it went off.
Santa Fe 911, what's the location of your emergency? We need an ambulance out at Bonanza Creek Ranch right now. We've got 2 people shot on a movie set accidentally.
Could you advise them that to put all the weapons away?
Calling it in wasn't actually with them, but they sounded like they had a medic on scene and were trying to deal with that portion of it.
I think the first person I made eye contact with was was Halyna, who was clearly injured. She was starting to go flush, and I think holding her right side. She said, "I can't feel my legs."
We need a seal. You have a seal?
A seal?
Seal.
Yeah, keep the answer down. I got a sterile glove and a backing gloves. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you
over there? Over there?
Yep.
Yeah.
My hand is on it.
Talking? Where's that? Right shoulder, stop. Oh, we're going to get you up.
First she shot her?
She came in here and went across her chest.
And it came. Okay. You want air flight?
Yeah, we got one in route.
Okay. 32 Santa Fe. One female shot in the chest. Male shot in the stomach. Request an air flight.
So they were trying to stabilize her to get her in a helicopter.
Deep breath, Halyna.
Feeling good to you? Yeah, feeling a good girl. Good girl. Okay?
There you go. Good girl.
I remember looking over and her looking back at me. They put me on some kind of stretcher and rolled me out.
While Halyna was airlifted, Joel Souza was taken by ambulance to St. Vincent Hospital in Santa Fe. He was conscious the entire time, while also talking with a sheriff's deputy, trying to tell him what happened. At the same time, he was also asking about Halyna.
And it felt like somebody kicked me in the shoulder, and then I was down on my ass, and then I looked over and see the cinematographer, Halyna Hutchins, with blood coming out of her back. She was between me and I think where the gun went off, and I think it went through her and into me. Do you know anything about what's going on with her? Is she okay? Back at the Bonanza Creek Ranch, investigators are now trying to get their head around exactly what happened. So they're interviewing everyone who was in the church. How many people you think were in here when it happened?
3, maybe 4.
4? Maybe. Okay. So 2 more other than you two?
Reed, as soon as I see him, Reed, camera operator. Reed, yes, sir.
Okay, who else?
Reed Russell was here. Alec Baldwin was the actor on set that pulled the trigger.
Alec Baldwin?
Yes, sir.
Where's he at?
Yes.
Yeah, you help me find him?
Yes, sir. Right there on the cell phone with the cowboy.
Okay.
Are you doing okay? Going on, actually. We're requesting that you and Ms. Gutierrez conduct interviews back at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. If
you tell me what to do.
Okay.
You tell me what to do.
We would appreciate that, and then we'll.
When do you want me to do that?
We're gonna probably go right now.
Okay. What is your full name?
Hannah. Shannon age. Gutierrez. I'm the armor. Or at least I was.
They end up taking both Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez Reed down to the sheriff's department to do formal interviews. And what's interesting is that they have 2 very different stories about who handed Alec Baldwin the gun.
Who handed you your weapon in the day?
Hannah.
Hannah did. Okay. And physically handed or put it in the holster?
Handed it to me.
Okay.
She would show me the gun.
Okay.
Or she'd say, "Code the cold gun." She'd say, "Test it," or some language to indicate she handed me the gun, that it was fine. And she'd say, "Do you want to check?"
Okay.
We didn't want to insult her. I said, "We never had a problem."
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, I'm good."
At one point, Dave had it, the assistant director, but he was just sitting in with it, and then I saw him, and I was like, okay, this is fine, he's just sitting in, and then I walked out, and yeah. And how do you know that Dave had it? I handed it on to Dave while he was sitting in for the shot.
The interview was an hour and 13 minutes long with Alec Baldwin. And at the very end, the lead detective tells him that Halyna Hutchins has died.
I do have some very unfortunate news to tell you. She didn't make it. No. Yeah. Well, Joel's still at the hospital. Sorry.
I got one of the little alerts on my phone, the little news alerts, and it was from the Hollywood Reporter, and I was like, oh, crap, that's the film that Halyna's on. And then several hours later was when the news updated and said that it was her that had gotten shot and that she didn't make it.
Coming up, the aftermath.
This has been surely the worst situation I've ever been involved with.
Alec is not exactly known worldwide for his even temperament. That has got to play in this investigation.
Plus, how did live rounds make it onto a movie set?
I feel bad for like having connected the dots and going, oh, I think I know how this happened.
Why would there be live ammo on the set?
I have no idea.
July 14th.
Accomplice to murder returns.
This is somebody he trusted.
This is in fact a murder. They were in this together.
Accomplice to Murder with Vinnie Politan. All new episodes return July 14th, only on Court TV.
Any suggestion that I am not complying with requests or orders or demands or search warrants about my phone, that's a lie.
The October 2021 shooting death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins on the movie set Rust sent shockwaves through Hollywood and set off a media firestorm focused mainly on the actor who had the gun in his hand, Alec Baldwin.
Again, thank you to everybody who offered me support online. To those people who offered me the opposite of support, I understand. I understand where you're coming from.
There was a day in Vermont when Alec Baldwin was driving with his family, and the media paparazzi was following him everywhere. He decided to get out of his car and just started to talk.
It's an active investigation in terms of a woman dying. She was my friend. She was my friend. The day I arrived in Santa Fe to start shooting, I took her to dinner with Joel, the director. We were a very, very, well-oiled crew shooting a film together, and then this horrible event happened. Now, I've been told multiple times, don't make any comments about the ongoing investigation, and I can't.
Halyna Hutchins' death immediately brought back memories of 28-year-old actor Brandon Lee's death. Brandon Lee, of course, the son of the great Bruce Lee, died in 1993 on the set of the movie The Crow.
That was the big one that really got the industry thinking about safety with weapons on the shows. So it started to clamp down at that point where dummy cartridges were really inspected.
But also kind of created this mindset of like, oh, that was back then in the 90s, and now we're more careful with everything, so we don't have to worry about, we don't have to worry about that happening again because we're careful now.
Several people in Hollywood were offering up their opinions on the shooting. And they were critical of Alec Baldwin, including actor George Clooney, who appeared on Marc Maron's podcast, WTF.
Every single time I'm handed a gun on a set, every time, Mark, they hand me a gun, I look at it, I open it, I show it to the person I'm pointing it to, we show it to the crew. Every single take, you hand it back to the armor when you're done, you do it again. Maybe Alec did that. Hopefully he did do that.
The 800-pound gorilla in the room is that Alec is not exactly known worldwide for his even temperament. That has got to play in this investigation.
At this point, Alec Baldwin, who was originally saying that he couldn't comment because of the investigation, decides then to do an interview with ABC News and George Stephanopoulos. He defends himself, saying that he never pulled the trigger, and he also responds to the critics like George Clooney, who said that he should have checked the gun.
Well, there were a lot of people who felt it necessary to contribute some comment to the situation, which really didn't help the situation at all. You have your protocol is you checking the gun every time. Well, good for you. Good for you. What I was taught by someone years ago was we don't want the actor to be the last line of defense against a catastrophic breach of safety with the gun.
For him to blanket statement say, you don't want an actor to be in charge of doing this. Well, we're not. We're not putting you in charge of doing that. We're just saying you need to make sure and be well aware of what is in this gun that is in your hands, that you're going to be pointing at people.
Whether or not Alec Baldwin should have checked the gun is up for debate. What isn't is the fact that they found 5 other live rounds on that set mixed in with dummy rounds.
Why would there be live ammo on the set?
I have no idea. At this point, it's kind of seeming like somehow these were mixed in.
Okay. Did you ever do gun practice on this set?
Never. Not once.
Never took the guns out for target practice, anything of the sort?
No, and I think there would be like videos, pictures of that or anything. You know, everyone would be pretty stoked if we were going shooting on set.
Okay.
Even on the weekends, there would at least be something.
You wouldn't suspect anyone to tell me that you were out there?
I don't know why people would say that.
Okay.
Because 100% I was not.
When it was learned that live ammunition made it onto the set, it triggered so many different hypothetical scenarios of what could have happened. How could live ammunition have made it onto that set? One of those that came up was the possibility that it could have been sabotaged. Did somebody deliberately plant a live bullet?
On 2 separate instances, I came across the cart where they moved the guns around. The armors would bring them to set and set their cart up. And on 2 separate instances, I came across that cart basically unmanned. There were firearms and ammunition on top of the cart. It's just not something you see normally on a set. It felt wrong, and it looked, you know, anybody could have done anything they wanted to those weapons, and nobody would have known.
Attorney Jason Bowles represents Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, and he doesn't rule out sabotage. He believes there are people who wanted Hannah fired and that they could have planted those live rounds.
Have a nice day.
What if there had been some scheme to have live rounds on set, not to have anybody hurt, not to have anybody shot, but just have them on there so they'll find them and Hannah's going to be fired? Well, nobody ever even looked at that.
The other obvious potential source of these live rounds was the ammunition supplier. And for this movie, it was a guy by the name of Seth Kenny.
See, this is my dummy and blank room. I mean,
There's a phone recording between Seth Kenny and the lead investigator, and Kenny basically says, I've connected the dots. I know where these live rounds came from.
I feel bad for like having connected the dots and going, oh, I think I know how this happened.
Jason Bowles, who represents Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, believes those live rounds came from Kenny because they were used initially on the set of 1883, another production.
On that movie set, they were training actors off-set on live fire and how guns work when they're shot. Seth Kenny then takes possession of those live rounds and the ammo can, and they end up back in New Mexico. Now, at his shop in Albuquerque. Now, when the sheriffs searched Seth's place, they found the ammo can but didn't find the rest of the live rounds.
Did Seth Kenny provide her with prop ammunition where he commingled live rounds with blank rounds?
Seth Kenny, while named in 2 civil lawsuits, was cleared by investigators in the criminal prosecution. He maintains that the live rounds were brought onto the set by Hannah Gutierrez.
Coming up next, did Alec Baldwin pull the trigger?
I never once said, never, that the gun went off in my hand automatically. I always said I pulled the hammer back.
Pretty good chance that he pulled the trigger, subconsciously we'll say.
Plus, the courtroom battle ahead in the case against Alec Baldwin.
The law is not about Hollywood. The law is not about how they do things. The law is about how the law applies to all of us collectively. A-list actor Alec Baldwin is cast in the real-life role he never wanted.
I try and cock the gun, the gun goes off.
Criminal defendant.
His lack of gun safety is something that he's going to have to answer for.
We heard that this was a toxic set.
One more.
It's not his fault. He did nothing wrong.
Is there an actor's exemption from liability when they're handling a deadly firearm?
The Alec Baldwin manslaughter trial. Live coverage coming this July, only on Court TV.
I want to ensure the victims, their families, and the public that we are conducting a thorough and objective investigation.
In the weeks and months after the Rust movie shooting, the focus on the investigation was centered on three people. The armorer, 24-year-old Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, assistant director David Halls, and actor Alec Baldwin, who was maintaining in interviews, including the one that he did with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, that he didn't pull the trigger when he shot and killed Halyna Hutchins.
It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never.
As expected, criminal charges were filed against Hannah Gutierrez and David Halls. Prosecutors also decided to charge Alec Baldwin with involuntary manslaughter.
Every person that handles a gun has a duty to make sure that if they are going to handle that gun, point it at someone and pull the trigger, that it is not going to fire a projectile and kill someone. An actor doesn't get a free pass just because they're an actor.
I never once said, never, that the gun went off in my hand automatically. I always said I pulled the hammer back, and I pulled it back as far as I could. I never took a gun and pointed at somebody and clicked the thing.
Alec Baldwin claims he didn't pull the trigger. Well, the FBI disagrees. They tested the gun and concluded that the only way that that gun would have been fired was if the trigger was pulled. We went to visit Armorer Scott Rasmussen in New Mexico, who owns a similar gun to the one that Alec Baldwin used, and he explained to us why he thinks the trigger had to be pulled for that gun to fire.
It's .45 caliber, which is the same caliber that he had on the show. It functions identical. You pull the hammer back, and you would pull the trigger to fire the thing. So if you pull the hammer back, and it's not going to fire by itself, and if you take a mallet, it's not going to fire until you pull the trigger.
In that church scene that was filmed before lunch, there's video footage of it. Alec Baldwin seems to have his finger on the trigger, or at least it's right next to the trigger. And Scott says that could explain how the gun went off.
It's almost hard not, if you have your finger there, it's almost hard not to pull it and pull
the trigger, yeah. Especially the way the movement that he was doing, pulling it out of his holster and then going forward with it. Pretty good chance that he pulled the trigger, subconsciously we'll say.
In the test firing in the lab, the FBI examiners did what's called a drop test, and they broke the gun. And then they had to reassemble it to get it working again. So this goes to the issue of operability. The firearm is no longer in its original condition. This is something we can expect the defense team to make a big deal about at trial.
The defense is basically making the argument that one of the most important key pieces of evidence in this whole trial was destroyed, and they didn't have a chance to examine it on their own.
In this case, Mr. Baldwin faces two types of charges, two scenarios where they'll have to decide whether he's guilty or not guilty. The first is basically gross negligence. You didn't have a care about what you were doing. You were above just regular negligence, like it just wasn't a simple accident based on negligence, rather it was some total disregard for other people's safety. The second is basic negligence, that you mishandled the firearm.
They really do have to show that he couldn't care less. I mean, in the end, that's what they have to convince a jury of, and that might be very, very difficult. Why would you have somebody else who actually checked the weapon in the first place if you couldn't care less?
One of the themes we expect to see from the prosecution is hurry, hurry, hurry was the motto on the set. We know Alec Baldwin was in charge on that set, and the prosecution is expected to argue that at times he was encouraging everyone to rush, including the armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed.
One more. I forgot to reload stuff. No, right away. Let's reload. Here we go.
Potentially disregarding safety protocols.
We should have 2 guns and both were reloading.
I tell them safety is my main concern. I'm going at a fast pace, but I'm not going so fast that I'm going to stumble or I'm going to forget a step. I will not allow them to push me that far.
Hannah, as the 24-year-old, should have told Mr. Baldwin, no, I'm not doing it like that, which she would never work on a movie set again, and she probably would have been fired the next day.
We have the armorer. That's their job. That is literally why they are hired. They are the first line. Now, who's after that? David Halls. He, too, has an enormous responsibility because that's what he was hired to do. The idea that you have this actor on the back end, he's the last in the chain. These people have the obligation.
Alec Baldwin has appeared in over 100 movies. David Halls and Hannah Gutierrez are the ones that he trusted that what he was directed to do would be safe, and that wasn't his responsibility.
If that scene were him in the church and he was going to commit suicide, I guarantee you he would make sure the gun was totally empty before he rehearsed that scene. He would not just blindly take that, pull the trigger. He would make sure that the gun was empty. Because why? His life depended on it. But yet he didn't extend that courtesy to anybody else when he took that gun from Dave Halls.
Coming up,
Will the defendant please stand?
Hannah Gutierrez learns her fate as Alec Baldwin prepares for trial.
It's important to me that the truth be known.
And remembering Halyna Hutchins.
She was great at her job, and she died. And that hurts me every day.
Nobody goes in to this expecting that they're gonna die or get seriously injured on set. I just hope that during all this, it doesn't get lost. A fantastic person that Halyna was.
TV.
Will the defendant please stand?
We find the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as charged in count 1.
In March of 2024, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the armorer on the set of the movie Rust, was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in connection to the death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. And when it came time for sentencing, Judge Mary Marlowe Summer did not hold back, sentencing Gutierrez to the maximum of 18 months in prison.
You alone turned a safe weapon into a lethal weapon. But for you, Miss Hutchins would be alive, a husband would have his partner, and a little boy would have his mother.
The judge at the sentencing of the armorer said, you alone turned this weapon from a safe weapon into a lethal weapon. You alone. Now contemplate what that means if you're Alec Baldwin and you can lean into this concept. How are you not caring? How are you not worried about this, not concerned about this, when she alone was responsible for it?
Now the question is, what will happen with Alec Baldwin? He's accused of involuntary manslaughter, and we know that his case is very different from the case against Hannah Gutierrez-Reed in the case against David Halls. With Hannah and David, it's very obvious they didn't do their jobs properly. But with Alec Baldwin, that's really up for debate, especially in the Hollywood film industry.
When Alec Baldwin was charged with involuntary manslaughter, the Screen Actors Guild issued a scathing statement stating that the actor is not responsible for the safety on a movie set. That role is the responsibility of the employer.
A million things going on in the actor's mind. When it comes time to shoot a scene and they have to hold a weapon, you don't want the responsibility to be on the actor, that they are the ones that are having to make sure that the gun is safe.
We're not asking you to be an armor, not asking you to be an expert in firearms, just asking you to be safe and use common sense. My God, if you can't remember your lines and you can't remember to make sure that the gun is empty, then you shouldn't be an actor. You shouldn't be on camera because you're risking people's lives, as Alec Baldwin has demonstrated.
Alec Baldwin is in a unique situation because he's not only an actor, but he's a producer on this movie, one of 6 producers. The question is, does his producer title mean that he was responsible for the safety of people on the set? Well, he says that his role as producer was just about the scripting. Purely editorial, he had nothing to do with it. And there is a practice in Hollywood where they'll allow an actor to have a producer credit in name only.
Wait. A lot of times what happens in projects like this, you'll have an actor like Alec who's brought in and he's getting paid less than he normally would get paid as an actor. And it's just, well, in exchange, you're going to be a producer on the film and you're going to get a cut of the back end and you're going to, have your name in as a producer. And so there's sort of a producer in name only.
About a month before this case is supposed to go to trial, Alec Baldwin announces that he is going to be doing a reality show at his home with his wife and his 7 kids.
And we have an announcement to make.
Good God, no. 1, 2, 3. We are the Baldwins. And we're coming to TLC.
If I were one of Alec Baldwin's attorneys, I would not want the reality show filming focused on anything that has to do with the trial. That is too risky and it's just not smart. However, it's also a great way to show the public that he's not concerned about the gravity of these charges. And I think these are really smart optics that Alec Baldwin is putting forward before his trial.
The law is not about Hollywood. The law is not about how they do things. The law is about how the law applies to all of us collectively, without exception.
I'm just going to proceed with Mr. Baldwin's case as best we can and in a manner that's fair and impartial, and hope for an outcome that assists in bringing justice to Ms. Hutchins. And hopefully throughout this process, people in the film industry are beginning to understand that real guns aren't toys.
Cool. I gotta get cool.
It's important to me that the truth be known. That Halyna's husband and son, her family, know the truth of what happened. And it's important that the industry, the motion picture and television industry, knows what happened so that this never happens again.
When I think about Halyna, I think about the potential that she had as an artist, as a cinematographer. I knew that she was going to go on to do great things. She had already accomplished really great things, and I knew that trajectory of hers was going to continue to go up. We lost a friend, and she was a wife and a mother and a daughter and a sister. Someone very special to everybody in our personal lives. I just hope that during all this, it doesn't get lost, the fantastic person that Halyna was. Nobody goes in to this expecting that they're gonna die or get seriously injured on set. If anything good comes out of the tragedy of Halyna's death, it's that we can phase out the use of real weapons on set so that this never happens again.